What's up guys, Doug Polk here, and today I'm excited to announce that we are teaming up with PLO Matrix to give you guys some PLO software that I think will really take your PLO game to the next level. PLO Matrix takes the preflop solutions to 30, 50, and 100 big blind play for PLO and uses some innovative dual grid stacking in order to show you what to be doing preflop in a very quick and concise manner. PLO, when compared to No Limit, can be very complex pre-flop. So for a lot of people, when you're starting to play the game, or even when you're an advanced player in PLO, it's tough to know what the subtle differences are between certain hands and the way that you should be playing them. PLO Matrix solves these problems for you. Let's go ahead and take a look at what it actually looks like. So here we have the login to PLO Matrix. Once we do log in, we can select our stakes. Now, basically the stake level will determine the rate that you're going to be playing or you're going to be paying when you do play, so it can give you a more custom tailored result for the games that you're playing in specifically. I went ahead and selected micro stakes because I felt like most of the audience would probably be more accurate for, but of course you can pick the one that most applies to you. So now we have this grid, and how are we going to use this grid? Now, the two sides of the grid actually just represent different stack sizes. So, for example, you see this pink side of the grid. This would be for 30 big blinds if I selected that, or 50, or 100. If I made it 100, these are both 100. They're exactly the same thing. It's just mirrored. So, for example, if I wanted to figure out what I was supposed to be opening when I'm on the button, I would just go to button, which is down here, and then click on button. This will show me my open range. And we'll get to how specifically to look at these ranges using the next click next. But that's essentially how this grid works. They're really mirrored unless you want to select different stack sizes. It does give you the option to look at 30 or 50 big blind stack sizes because there is a decent amount of short stacking in PLO, and this improves your flexibility when trying to figure out what you're doing pre-flop. If there are different stack sizes, you're going to want to use the one that most closely relates to the situation at hand. But anyway, so let's just say that we want to raise first in. Well, in that scenario, we would go to button, and we would click on our assigned button, which would be here, for example. We could also do it on the other side. Again, these are the same because it's 100 big blinds is selected. But there are lots of different options that you have here. You can do raise first in. You can do squeezing versus multiple players. And really, when you're squeezing, you're going to look at the opener as the most important person because the person calling behind is nearly as important as that initial raising range into the pot. You can also see what to do versus an under the gun player, versus mid position, versus cutoff, versus button, and of course versus small blind. Now, there are less options as it's later in the hand because if small blind raises, really you can only be in the big blind. But if mid position raises, well, you could be cutoffs, button, small blind, or big blind. But the point is you're going to find your position on this axis and then go down to the action at hand. For the sake of analysis, let's just pick one of the spots where we could fold, call, or 3-bet so you can kind of see things at work. Let's say that we are going to be on the button and we are facing a cutoff raise. We click on this square, and now we have this grid here available. Very similar to No Limit, the top right section is going to be more suited than the bottom left. However, No Limit, the top right are suited hands and bottom left are unsuited. Well, here we have double suited as the top right hands and just single suited as bottom left. Now, you might ask yourself, well, where are the rainbow hands? And it turns out that according to a lot of pre-flop solutions, rainbow hands in PLO are very bad and not often played unless they're particularly strong. But we're also working on putting in an addition here to fix that in the near future as well. Anyway, so let's take a look at this. How do we input our hands so that we know what to do? Well, we start with or we think about our two immediately highest showdown hands. For example, let's say you had ace, ace, 10, deuce. Well, then the highest two cards in your hand would be ace, ace, a pair of aces. Now let's say you had a hand like ace, king, queen, jack. The highest two cards in your hand are ace, king. Let's say you had a hand like ace, jack, deuce, deuce. Well, then deuces would be the highest two cards in your hand. But basically, you take the highest two cards. If it's a pair, it'll always be the pair. And then if your hand's not paired, then it's going to be just the highest ranking two cards. And we click on those based on if they're double suited or single suited. Now that sounds a little complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. So like, let's say for example, we had ace, queen, jack, 10, single suited. So it's single suited, so we use the bottom left, and ace, queen is our highest two cards. So we click on ace, queen. That is all you have to do in order to get a chart that shows you how to play with your hand. It's 2 clicks. All you have to click on is the position and then click on your highest 2 cards and boom, you're ready to go. Now we have our PLO Matrix solution here, which is in the top right, the hand suited to the best card, and in the bottom left, either 3 of a suit or suited to the weaker cards. So for example, if we see Jack Deuce here, we take the Ace Queen that we put in before, we take the Jack Deuce that we have here now. So we have Ace Queen Jack Deuce suited to the Ace. If it was suited to the Queen or suited to the Jack, well, then we would look on the other side of the matrix where we see Jack Deuce down here, which is a fold. Now, I understand that there are many options for what it can be suited to, how many of the suit you have, if you have 3 of a suit. But the reality is that the solvers end up seeing a lot of those hands as being very similar in value. And this allows us to condense that information into something that is very immediately applicable for you to be able to learn from. Anything in black is not possible because we've already put our 2 high cards in, so you can't exactly have Ace Queen being your highest 2 cards and then also have Ace 9. Well, in that scenario, then aces would be your highest hand. So anything blacked out is not possible, and then the legend shows you what you should be doing facing various actions. For example, if you had Ace Queen Jack 10 suited to the ace, we would be raising and calling a 4-bet. If we had, that of course means 3-betting because we're facing a cutoff open. If we've got Ace Queen Jack 9 though, well then we're just going to be calling facing the open. If we have a hand like Ace Queen Jack 5 suited to the ace, we're going to be 3-betting, but then actually folding to a 4-bet. One of the things I found actually most surprising from some of these solutions was the amount of hands you might actually want to fold when you are facing a 4-bet. Going back to the main page here, we have tons of preflop options that we can implement to very immediately learn and understand how to be playing preflop PLO better. And that's where things are headed these days, more and more as computing power gets stronger and as these strategies more aligned with what true GTO will look like start to emerge. Well, you're going to want to be able to implement this into your game. In fact, there are a lot of players that I know who simply by taking these ranges and learning them and then playing poker afterwards have already managed to become profitable players just through that process. There's no doubt in my mind that PLO Matrix offers immense value for players looking to learn the game of PLO. And at Upswing, we've been very careful with entering the software space because we want to make sure that we do it right. Well, these guys do it right. And if you buy PLO Matrix, your game will improve tremendously. Unless, of course, you're already playing perfect, but doesn't seem likely.